I wasn't just dating Travis. I was building something with him. Every late-night call, every stupid inside joke, every sleepy good morning text felt like a step toward something that mattered. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like progress. I'd catch myself imagining little things. Sharing an apartment, planning lazy Sunday brunches, maybe even a future with both our names on the mailbox. Silly stuff, I know, but it made me feel warm. Safe. Like maybe this time, love would actually stick. Lately, though, something had changed. He wasn't rude or distant, just not fully there. His texts were shorter, his laugh didn't reach his eyes, and when I tried to lean in emotionally, he seemed to pull back. But I didn't jump to conclusions. I figured maybe work was stressing him out, or life was just weighing heavy. People have off days, relationships ebb and flow. I didn't want to be the paranoid girlfriend, because deep down, I still believed in us. I believed that the quiet was just a phase, a storm we'd weather. I'd already started making plans in my head. Weekend getaways, cozy movie nights, maybe even moving in together one day. The kind of future that makes you smile for no reason when you think about it. What I didn't realize back then was that I was planning a future with a stranger. I remember telling my best friend about him, gushing like a teenager. She raised an eyebrow once and asked, "Are you sure he's on the same page?" I laughed it off. Of course he was, or at least I thought he was. He said the right things, held me like I meant something. And when I looked in his eyes, I thought I saw someone building the same dream. But now that I think about it, maybe I only saw what I wanted to see. There were small things I brushed off. He never let me come to his place, always had an excuse. Something about his roommate being annoying or the place being messy, and when I offered to help clean or bring food over, he'd say, "Let's just hang out at yours instead." At the time, it felt sweet, like he preferred being in my space. I told myself he was just private, that not everyone opens up quickly. But the truth is, I was already opening every door, while he was quietly locking his. I was planning dinners, he was dodging details. I was dreaming about we, and he was living in me. Still, I kept showing up, with hope, with heart, with hands wide open. Because that's what love is, right? Showing up even when it's uncomfortable. I didn't realize I was showing up to something that never truly existed. There's a kind of comfort that comes with believing in someone, like a soft blanket you wrap around the doubts. That's what I did with Travis. I wrapped my gut feelings in, he's just tired, and things will get better. I ignored the way he flinched at questions about the future. I silenced my own instincts because I wanted this to work. I really did. And when you want something that badly, you start editing the truth to make it fit your story. I told myself I wasn't naive, just patient. That good things take time. That he was worth the effort, the uncertainty, the waiting. And maybe I was right. Or maybe I was just afraid to admit I was falling for a version of him that never existed. But I held on. I kept making plans in my head. Little ones, like picking out birthday gifts. Big ones, like wondering what it'd be like waking up next to him for the rest of my life. I thought I knew who he was. I thought I was slowly building a future brick by brick, like a careful architect of something lasting. But love shouldn't have to be one-sided labor. And even though I didn't know it yet, every step I took toward him was actually a step deeper into someone else's lie. I was making room in my heart for a man who had already filled his life with secrets. It was one of those impulsive decisions, the kind you make when your heart is louder than your head. He'd been distant, yes, but I missed him. I wanted to remind him, and maybe myself, of what we had. So I picked up his favorite drink, that overpriced caramel cold brew he always raved about, and drove to his place. I figured a surprise visit would be sweet, thought it'd spark something again. I imagined his smile when he saw me. The drive was full of hope. I played our favorite playlist, the one with all the songs we'd quietly claimed as ours. My mind drifted to what we'd do when I got there. Maybe curl up on the couch, talk like we used to, melt the weird tension that had crept between us lately. I wasn't nervous, not really, just excited. It felt like the kind of gesture people make in movies, spontaneous, romantic, meaningful. I wanted that moment. When I pulled up outside, I stared at the building for a while. I didn't even know which window was his. Isn't that funny? For someone I'd grown so close to, parts of his world were still a mystery. But I pushed the thought aside and walked up, heart pounding. One knock, maybe two. And then I waited. I had no idea that behind that door was the beginning of the end. The door opened, but it wasn't Travis standing there. It was a woman, maybe around my age, maybe younger, wearing an oversized t-shirt and looking just as surprised as I felt. For a second, we both froze. My smile stayed on my face longer than it should have, because my brain hadn't caught up yet. I thought maybe she was a roommate, a cousin, something, anything. But then she tilted her head and asked, "Can I help you?" I stuttered something useless like, "Is Travis here?" Her eyebrows pulled together, cautious. "Travis?" she repeated. And then she said it, casually, like it meant nothing. "My boyfriend isn't home right now, but he'll be back in about 2 hours." I don't remember what I looked like in that moment, but I remember the way my stomach dropped. Everything inside me went still. Cold. Heavy. Like the air had been knocked out of my lungs without anyone touching me. She said it so easily. Like it wasn't a sentence that would split my world wide open. I nodded. Or maybe I didn't. I couldn't feel my body. My hands were still holding the coffee, but my heart was somewhere else entirely. My thoughts were sprinting in every direction, trying to make this make sense. But it didn't. It couldn't. Not if she was calling him boyfriend. Not if she said it like she had every right to. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her a million questions. How long had they been together? Did she know about me? Was I the secret? Or was she? But instead, I just stood there. Still. Numb. The kind of numb that isn't quiet, but deafening. My face was burning, my throat tight, but I couldn't move, couldn't even blink fast enough to process what was happening. She must have noticed something in my eyes, that flicker of realization, that broken attempt at pretending this was fine. Her smile faded. She didn't close the door, but she didn't invite me in either. Just waited. And I realized I didn't want to know more. Not like this. Not standing on a stranger's doorstep holding a drink for a man who clearly had a life I didn't belong to. So I did the only thing I could do. I said sorry and turned away. Walking back to my car felt like floating. Not light, not weightless, just disconnected, like my body was on autopilot. I didn't cry. Not then. There were no tears left in that moment, only silence. A silence that wrapped around me like a storm cloud, too heavy to shake off. I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, realizing the man I thought I knew was someone else entirely. I kept hearing her voice in my head on repeat. "My boyfriend isn't home right now." It echoed like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Every word chipped away at the reality I thought I had. Travis. Her boyfriend. Not mine. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. I sat in the parking lot with his coffee still sweating in my hand, wondering how I had become this, the uninvited visitor to someone else's relationship. I asked myself the same question over and over. How didn't I see it? The signs were there. I just didn't want to connect them, and that realization stung more than anything. That I had betrayed myself in a way, choosing hope over clarity. Every text he didn't answer, every vague excuse I brushed off, every moment I told myself I was overthinking. It all led to this front door, to her front door. When I finally drove off, the silence in the car wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Like every second I didn't speak, the truth pressed harder against my chest. I didn't cry. Not yet. It wasn't sadness that hit me first. It was shock. The kind that makes your hands tremble and your mind scramble for something solid to land on. But there was no landing, just free fall. I replayed every moment with him like a reel on loop. Our first date. That time he made me laugh so hard I snorted, the way he used to call me sunshine when I was upset. Were any of those moments real? Or were they just performances, scenes in a story he was telling to multiple women at once? The thought made my stomach twist. I wasn't just heartbroken. I felt fooled, cheapened, like my love had been a game he never intended to finish. I kept thinking about her, the girl at the door. She didn't deserve this either. None of us did. I didn't know who else was part of his carefully orchestrated lie, but suddenly it felt bigger than just me. This wasn't one mistake. This was a pattern, a carefully hidden life. And I had walked into it like someone stepping onto stage mid-scene, not realizing they weren't the lead. I had been a background character in his drama, but what hurt the most was the quiet. The way I left without asking for answers, the way I didn't scream, didn't accuse, didn't break anything. I just walked away. Because deep down, some part of me already knew. I wasn't shocked by what she said. I was shattered by how much sense it made. The truth had been there, whispering all along. I had just been too in love to hear it clearly. The drive home felt endless. I don't remember the traffic lights or the turns, just the weight. The kind of weight that makes your chest ache and your jaw clench without realizing. I kept waiting for the tears to come, for the heartbreak to crash down in waves, but all I felt was quiet. A quiet so loud it roared in my ears. It wasn't grief yet. It was something colder, emptier. I sat on the edge of my bed when I got home, still holding my keys like I didn't know what to do without them. The silence followed me in, settled on my shoulders like a blanket soaked in betrayal. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at nothing, trying to remember what it felt like to trust someone, trying to remember who I was before him. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just stared at the ceiling, my mind rewinding every moment we'd shared, looking for clues, looking for the moment he decided I was disposable. But there was no warning shot, no dramatic sign, just quiet choices he made, and louder ones I didn't. The worst part? I hadn't lost him that day. I'd never really had him in the first place. I didn't rush to confront him. There was no rage-fueled text, no dramatic phone call. Just silence. Controlled, deliberate silence. I needed time, not to process what happened, but to see it clearly. I wasn't after closure anymore. I was after truth. And not just his. Mine. I started watching him from a distance, not as someone who loved him, but as someone gathering evidence. He kept acting like nothing happened. Same lazy texts, same hollow good mornings. I responded just enough to keep him unsuspecting. But I was digging now, scrolling through his social media, cross-checking names he casually mentioned before. I found patterns, the same comments, the same recycled lines, the same heart emojis to different women. It was like watching a magician fumble his tricks under a spotlight. The worst part, he wasn't even careful. There were photos of him at places he said he'd never been. Women tagging him in stories he quickly untagged. He must have thought I'd never look. Or maybe he thought I'd never want to see. But once your eyes open, you can't unsee. And once your heart goes quiet, your mind gets sharper. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was focused. I started keeping a folder, not out of spite, out of clarity, screenshots, photos, timestamps. Every little piece that proved he wasn't just careless, he was calculated. There wasn't just me and the girl at the door. There were others. Plural. Some looked like me, some didn't. But we all had the same smile in those pictures. The smile of someone who hadn't realized she was being lied to. I couldn't believe how easy it was to find them. Just a bit of digging, a few reverse image searches, some comments he thought would stay buried. And there they were, the other versions of me. Other women thinking they were the only one. It was surreal, like watching a movie where I knew the ending, but still couldn't look away. But this time, I wasn't watching as the victim. I was watching as the editor. I didn't cry as I gathered it all. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I planned, quietly, carefully. If he was that good at spinning stories, I'd be better at untangling them, better at pulling the curtain back. I wasn't just going to disappear from his life. I was going to leave a crack in every mask he wore, and let the light do the rest. I blocked him. Everywhere. Not with anger, but with clarity. No explanations. No dramatic goodbye. Just a clean cut, like severing a cord that had been fraying for months. And then I did something he never expected. I reached out to every woman I'd found, one by one. I didn't accuse, I didn't blame. I just shared what I knew. Screenshots, messages, dates, proof. Some of them didn't respond. Some were angry, not at me but at themselves, for not seeing it sooner. And some thanked me. One said, "I thought I was crazy. Thank you for making me feel sane again." That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about undoing the story he'd written across multiple lives and showing each of us that we weren't alone in the lie. I didn't want revenge. I wanted restoration. Not just for me, but for every woman who had been pulled into his world and left questioning her worth. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to plead. I was simply going to pull every thread he'd woven and let the whole thing unravel. And when it finally fell apart, I wanted him to watch. Weeks passed. Quiet ones. He must have noticed my silence eventually, because out of nowhere, I got a message from an unknown number. No greeting. Just, "Why would you do this to me?" That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so typical. As if he were the victim now. As if exposure was worse than deception. He wanted answers. He wanted a version of me who still cared enough to explain. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I didn't owe him closure, or softness, or understanding. I didn't owe him anything. So I didn't reply with words. I replied with a screenshot. A photo of the group chat I'd created. Dozens of names. All women. All real. All aware. We'd compared notes, lined up timelines, shared receipts. It wasn't chaos. It was community. And now it was loud enough that even he couldn't ignore it. I sent it without a single emoji, just the image, no caption, no threat, just truth. Cold, complete, undeniable. And then I muted the number. I didn't need to hear his excuses. I didn't want his apologies. I wanted him to sit in the wreckage of his own making, not because I hated him, but because I finally respected myself too much to clean up his mess. We didn't just stop at the group chat. A few of the women had been lied to for years. One of them had even met his parents. Another had introduced him to her kid. There was so much pain in our stories, but also so much power. We weren't just victims. We were witnesses, collaborators, a coalition of women who decided enough was enough. We shared everything. Then we shared it publicly. Reviews started popping up on his business pages. Not slander, just facts. Documented, dated, screenshotted. It wasn't a witch hunt. It was a mirror. One that finally forced him to see himself from the outside. Some of the girls left comments on his social media too, calling out the lies he had hoped would stay buried. Slowly, the polished image he curated began to crack, and the truth leaked out from underneath. He stopped posting after that. Deleted some accounts, probably panicked. I imagine it was the first time in a long while he didn't feel in control. But we weren't doing this to destroy him. We were doing it to free ourselves. From shame. From confusion. From the story we'd been tricked into starring in, and watching that false version of him unravel. It wasn't revenge. It was release. He tried reaching out one last time. Different number. Same desperation. He asked me to stop. Said I was ruining his life. But I hadn't posted a single word publicly. Not under my name. I didn't need to. The truth had legs of its own. And he wasn't being ruined. He was being revealed. There's a difference. He wanted me to feel guilty for breaking the illusion, but I felt lighter than I had in months. I didn't hate him. That's the part people never understand. Hate would have made him important. But he wasn't. Not anymore. What he did broke something in me. Yes. But it also rebuilt something else. A kind of self-respect I hadn't felt in a long time. I used to think love meant giving people the benefit of the doubt. Now I know real love starts with giving yourself the benefit of the truth. I never screamed. I never begged. I never stood outside his door, demanding answers. I just stepped away, and I left behind a trail of honesty so clear he could never lie the same way again. Maybe he'll change. Maybe he won't. That's not my story to tell. Mine is simpler now. I trusted someone who didn't deserve it. And then I chose myself.